Hi, everyone. Good morning, good day, good evening. I'm really happy to have you again. It's been like a few months, almost a year since I had my last webinar with you. So I'm really excited to have you all again. And today we are starting a new series. I told you like in my last LinkedIn post that I created many webinars trying to spread the knowledge across the community, and I created like some content for data center, cloud, CCDE, 5G. 5G was one of the big hits. So today and hopefully in the upcoming months, we'll start new series about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is one of the booming fields, it's becoming very critical, and even in most of the expectation of the future, the highly paid job and the highly needed skills, one of them is cybersecurity. So today we'll start the first session of this series, and it will be about attack surface. So we'll start from the attack surface. So you need to understand how the attacker think, what are the tools they are using, what are some of the non-profit organization can help you in defining these attacks, which is MITRE and the framework as an attack as a tool. So we'll talk about all of that today. But before we carry on, let me introduce my main speaker and guest of honor, Akram. Akram, so if you can, in a couple of seconds, can you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mohammed. My name is Akram Hamid. I'm technical solution architect for cybersecurity for Cisco. And I've been doing this job for almost 15 years now. So I'm very happy to be joining you talking about these exciting topics.
Great. We are really glad to have you. And guys, please make it interactive. So if you have any questions, please stop us. You can unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you prefer to put it in the chat, let's do that. And also toward the end of the session, we'll keep the last 10 minutes to answer your question if you have any further questions. So without further ado, let me go through the agenda of the meeting of the session today. So today we'll cover these 4 items. We'll talk about the attack surface. Then we'll spend some time discussing the MITRE attack framework. We have one use case, which we will try to discuss with you. And finally, we'll show you a very interesting tool, which is the MITRE Attack Navigator. So that's in the nutshell what will happen today. The session will be around 1 hour. So we'll spend 50 minutes covering these 4 topics, and then we'll allow like 10 minutes for your questions and answers. Okay, let me start with attack surface. So why I thought about that? Why I thought about starting a new series about security, and why many people in the industry and the IT talking about security. Like security is becoming very smart and getting even more and more smarter day by day. And I found this good reference about, this was 2020, about the cost of data breach. So as you can see here, like it's not easy to detect a security breach. Some enterprise, some telco, some industry are very smart and very security ahead, and they can detect that in much lower number of days. But this is the average, because some industry lack a lot of security control and security measure. So this is one of the things that we are actually trying to do with doing this security awareness. So trying to minimize this number of days. So this is the day to detect a breach. But even once you detect a breach, in order to contain this breach and make sure it's contained, it's not spreading further, it's not affecting other elements or other components or one of the important assets of your company or your intellectual properties, we need to together as a community to try to build a tools and share the knowledge to minimize this detection time. And on average, as I mentioned, each breach will cost you around $3 to $4 million. This is not only the cost of the data lost, this is include the cost of, time is money. So some of the actual violation or exposures will be mainly affecting your work, affecting your activity, productivity, repetition. So all of that calculated as part of this damage which will happen due to these security attacks. To start, so what we'll do today, we will give you like, the attacker and hacker, they are different kinds of them. We have like the people who's explorers, just like exploring using some tools, and they don't have like, they just like doing it for fun or doing it for fame or whatever. And we have like very specialized attacker. We have like the hacktivists, that people who they are hacker, but also activists, and they are doing security for, they are doing their attacks to gain, as example, for a reason, and as example, maybe for the climate, and they want to people to be aware of what's happening. Other are like what we call it cyber criminal, and they are using ransomware to get money from their victim, and so on, cyber terrorist and APT. And we'll talk a bit about these different kind of groups. But usually they have like steps and chain a number of stages for their attack. So we will talk about this, one of them, which is the cyber kill chain. This is not the only one, but this is one of the simplified way and most common attack stages. So usually the attacker, he starts with reconnaissance. What he's trying to achieve using this stage is to learn more about you as a target or you as a victim. And he can use multiple ways to complete his job. So he can, as example, use some social engineering. Maybe he will give you a call, pretend that he is a bank and ask for your password. He give you a call pretending that he's IT support. He can use malicious email. And like for this social engineering, it can be targeted and non-targeted. So, and there's a lot of technique which we'll discuss through this series. So once he did the scanning, or sometimes some people use some scans like mmap or ping with multiple ports and so on, until he find like explosion or he find like a weak point where he can enter your network. So once he did his reconnaissance and he understand your attack, understand your vulnerability, he will start the second step, which is stage. And the stage, if it's sophisticated attack, he needs to build, as example, a website. Maybe he needs to create a DNS, build like a command and control center, and all the required maybe malware and tools which he will use during the attack. So this is the second step. Third step, once he get to this, he will actually maybe send you the email and waiting for one of the users to click this malicious link, which will grant him access to your PC as a start. So once he get access to your PC, he will try to get the required privilege, maybe do some changing to the Windows privilege, do some, put some file there, install some malware, and start the communication with the command and control center. So these are step 3, step 4, 5, and 6. Once he did that and start the communication, maybe share file, maybe encrypt your data, maybe do whatever harm he's trying to do with you, even take this precious data or encrypt it or whatever, or using your PC as a base station to attack something like DDoS attack. So he can use like an innocent victim and using thousands and hundreds of thousands of this victim to do a DDoS attack to a specific website or a specific organization. After that, in the last step, persistence, in these steps, it was for the hacker, it was maybe somehow a bit difficult to go through all these steps and to get access to your PC. So he wants to make it easy in the next time. So for sure, he'll try to do a backdoor. He'll try to, now he have access to your PC. Maybe he want to have access to some of the server in the data center. He do some changes. Some people even he get access to the network. He can do some changes to the communication matrix. He can do some changes to the firewall rules to allow him to spread across the network or have a safe way or an easy backdoor to access your network again. Even if you discover that he stole your password and you change it, he still have access to the network. So that's in the nutshell, in a few minutes, what we call a cyber kill chain. And here, let me ask Akram if he, from his many years of experience with the security, if he can give us an example, and then we can hear and answer your question about this skill share.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, Mohammed. So, yeah, a typical example would be something like maybe someone getting a link. So a reconnaissance stage would be like following a specific company. I've seen it on LinkedIn, like saying if this company is hiring someone who should be knowledgeable in, let's say, AIX, then I know for sure as an attacker that they might be having an IBM servers, or maybe if they're interested, or maybe hiring someone who should be having some Linux expertise, then I know for sure that they have a specific maybe OS of Linux. So this might be something like reconnaissance. Staging might be building the tools itself. Launching the attack would be, let's say, sending emails for users to click on the links. And then this also could be like spear phishing, which is targeted for a specific persona in the company. So it's not just the whole company, which is more effective. And then waiting for the victim to click on the link, install the malware, then communicate back home, and then persist. So this is a typical life cycle of how phishing can be done. It can be mapped to many other attacks, but yeah, this is one example.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Akram, for that. Just something else I want to take away from this slide. You know, it's like a game between the attacker and us, like the community, the good citizen in the community, or the enterprise. So, you know, many people, they are saying like hacker and attacker always one step ahead. Okay, even though by understanding and be aware of these steps, even if the attacker, as example, start this step, he's in reconnaissance, and you notice there's some scanning, or you notice that somebody like he contacted one of your employee and he's trying to get the password. And I mean, like when you know that the current step where the attacker is currently conducting or currently doing, you can predict what will happen next. And by doing this, you can start preparing yourself, putting your defense to avoid the second or third step. And as example, even if he start the launch, you can even try to control, as example, he put the malware and you detected there's a malware in the network. You can also do a lot of tools like sandboxing, like anomaly behavior, to see if your PC, as example, communicating with a strange command and control center, or communicating with a malicious IP. So then you can stop the attack. So what I'm trying to say, like, keep this skill chain at the back of your head, and be aware, even if the attacker is one step ahead, you can stop him in any place or any spot on this kill chain, and you can reverse the attack back if required. So this is something very important for you. So before moving to the next slide, let me pause for a few seconds if you have any questions about what we discussed so far. Okay, so I think it's good so far. This slide, for me, I will not go through all the details. This will be one of upcoming session. I just kept it here as a teaser to make sure you will come for the next sessions. So by the end of this series, today we are just discussing attack types, attack techniques, some of the frameworks which can help you to understand the threats and the vulnerabilities. But the end goal for you, as example, as an architect, as a CISO, as a security architect or whatever, is to try to understand the attack, put your methodology or put your plan to mitigate these attacks, and then choose the right tools for each of these stages. And as you know, this is one of the concepts we want you to, all of you may be aware of it, which is defense in depth. How to define your gaps, how to put the right tools and techniques for each areas. So this is something which we'll discuss in details, and we'll go about this NDR and threat intelligence and so on. So this will be one of the upcoming sessions which will discuss how to mitigate this kill chain. But first, we need to understand more detailed about this skill chain itself and the attack types. Yeah, so let's move to the second section today, which is MITRE attack. Before we start, let me ask you a question, and please, I want you to be active. I know most of us are fasting today, but one simple question. Consider yourself like and even if you are a security personnel in your company, are working as a security architect or cybersecurity, or even like if you're, security is a responsibility for all of us. So think from security perspective, what keeps you awake at night regarding security? Yeah, each one of you even can speak or just mention, like put it in a chat. Come on, guys. We're still waiting. We're not moving this step before somebody help us with this question.
Yeah, from my point of view, Mohammed, what makes me awake at night is to be afraid of somebody to come and attack me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's or even there is a threat that makes me maybe worried about.
Yeah.
So this is what is in my mind.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, like remind me, Hamdi, that like many of the what do you call it, surveys happen, and usually they ask the companies, do you know how many people access your network? Do you know how many equipments are logging? How to authenticate user? And the sad news that in most cases you don't have an exact observability of what's happening. So this is because you don't have the full knowledge about what's happening in your network. This is something that keep you awake. Let me check also on the chat. Ashraf is joking. He said headache. Yes, this is one of the reasons can make you up at night, but it's not regarding security. So over to you, Akram. So what do you think as a security?
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So over the last, if you're a CISO in the company or if you're a security personnel, over the last few years, maybe you've been investing heavily into lots of technologies, lots of different tools, shiny new stuff, but still you have no complete visibility on or maybe understanding of whether these tools and these capabilities that I've invested in, are they working effectively? Is it enough, or still should I be worried about something else? Is the data that I'm collecting, is it useful or not? Because I've seen many times people collecting lots and lots of data, typically something like a SIM solution, and then not tuned correctly to the point that it's basically collecting garbage. So, and as you know, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So, so this brings something like maybe this alert fatigue, which is what we call paralysis by analysis. So too many stuff to the point that you still, even if you're collecting hundreds of events, you're still not making actionable intelligence from them. Do you have any gaps in your environment, something that that should be alarming, but you're still not covering? Or maybe you're having coverage too much in a certain area, but still other areas you have no visibility or coverage on. So we've been investing heavily in the last few years as a CISO in lots of different new technologies, but still you have no complete comprehensive visibility or maybe an answer to whether this is enough or not. And don't get me wrong, because all of those big companies like Facebook, Uber, and all of them, you still hear in the news that they're having breaches. And those are the good ones. I mean, those companies, they invest heavily into cybersecurity, but still they fail short and they become victims to some sophisticated attacks. And this is exactly where a framework is needed. So a framework is basically trying to map all of these things that you should be taking care of but instead of doing it in an ad hoc way, by putting it into a framework, something that can be applied as a methodology, and not just doing it in an ad hoc way. So, and this is where MITRE comes into the picture.
Yeah, I just want to comment something here, Akram. Even when we were rehearsing for this session, I told you about like this point number 4. I believe this is one of the most important points, and hopefully also one of the takeaways, that you need to plan carefully and you need to plan smart. Like some people, you know, like they just put many firewalls and many vendors just to secure the perimeter, and then everything else is weak. And they have something like a donut security, or very hard from outside, but very soft and vulnerable from inside. So this is something which we discussed, I mean, also during this series, how to, as an architect, or as an engineer, how to build this map, and how to understand your gaps and define the right tools to be covered completely, not to have some areas with a lot of overlapping tools, but not delivering the end goal which you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. This part is actually very important, and by the end of today's session, I will tell you how to cover it. So to give you a heads up, this might be covered with something what we call purple teaming. So it's basically attack simulations. So you're trying to do a specific attack and then try to see if your defenses should be alerted or not. So, so you would know that you have certain gaps in certain areas, and then basically you should go and try to fix those areas. Not all of the cases by acquiring new tools. Actually, most of the cases you would be using or leveraging your already existing tools, but you still need to maybe tune the use cases, build a specific process for it, and so on. And again, this is the whole purpose of putting things into a framework. So it's something that you can see, you can check the boxes, you can see where you've fallen short, and so on. Something that can be applied as a methodology.
Thank you, Akram, for that. So yes, so what is attack? And maybe before going to attack, what is MITRE first? I know that MITRE is non-for-profit organization trying to help the people in security. So can you shed some light about MITRE and then one of their tools?
So MITRE are the good guys. Like these are, this is a non-profit organization, and basically the aim is, you can think of MITRE as the Wikipedia for the security tactics and techniques. And they have created what we call an attack framework, which stands for adversary tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. So basically, this is like a matrix showing all of the attack stages, much like the cyber kill chain, which we have talked about in the first slide. So the cyber kill chain is Lockheed Martin attack stages. MITRE goes beyond just an attack stage. So they build the whole what we call attack anatomy. So starting from the initial access and reconnaissance till the data exfiltration, but it doesn't leave you at this point and stop. So it goes far more into detail. So let's say the initial access. So it's divided into like, what are the tactics used, and then what are the techniques employed by the adversaries or the bad guys to execute those tactics. So let's say someone is trying to steal passwords from the memory of the operating system. This is a known attack. So it starts with the execution. So let's say someone is developing a malware. The malware would first have to use a tactic which is called the execution tactic. So how can I convince the user to execute the malware, which might be something like disabling user access control on the Windows. And then basically, how do I install it after the user has accepted to be installed on his PC? So going into something like hooking, which is another tactic. And then finally, using something like credential dumping tools for credential access. This is another tactic. So it would basically map the attack that might happen to you into specific tactics and techniques. And then basically you can use this to leverage your already security stack in place to detect those tactics and techniques. And to give you an idea, tactics and techniques is one of the detection methodologies that are used. So you can go with something as trivial as looking up a specific hash, or maybe searching for a specific source IP, destination IP, and so on. This is the signature-based detection, right? But then some new, or most of the new attacks don't really rely on signature-based detection. They rely on what we call tactics, techniques, and procedures. And tactics, techniques, and procedures are basically detection without the need to rely on signatures. Because signatures are good, but they are useless against something like zero-day attacks, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's a zero-day attack, then it doesn't have any signature still. So something like tactics and techniques is basically gonna show you that something wrong is happening, even though there is no known signature for it. So let's say a specific software like AnyConnect, for example, is creating specific files, image files under my documents. Even though AnyConnect as a process has a good hash, and the image or PDF file maybe that it has created under my documents, even though it might have a good hash, but this tactic or technique is not something good. So it's a detection based on tactics and techniques. Or maybe to give you another example, so let's say someone has failed logins on Windows for multiple times, and then followed by one successful login to the Windows system, and then followed by a password change attempt. So each and every one of those actions on its own is not something bad, but this sequence of events is what we call a specific tactic, which is maybe password brute forcing. Which is a known tactic. So even if it's coming from a good IP source, even if it's each and every action on its own is a good action, but the whole sequence of events is called tactic, a bad tactic. And this is where MITRE comes into the picture. It's basically mapping all the known tactics and techniques for each of the attack vectors, and then basically giving you an idea of how to detect each one of those, and then try to see if you fail short in each one of those. I'll pause here for a second. I've been talking for a while. And
it's interesting, Akram. Yeah. So even like attack itself, as you mentioned, like a Wikipedia or as a framework, like you can go, people would think that I need to go and search and maybe find specific technique or a specific action happening in my network, and I go and try to understand from attack what's really happening and give me some suggestion. But even now for the new tools, they are support this attack, MITRE attack framework embedded into the tool. So you don't need to worry about doing the search. This can happen at the background with an advanced way without you doing everything manually.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So many of the new tools currently are trying to map their detection techniques to the MITRE attack framework in a way that you would say that I can detect those tactics and techniques without the need of you manually have to write correlation for them. But I'm not sure if someone in the audience has any questions so far.
That's good. That means that we are doing good, simplifying this new complex topic. Yeah. So as we discussed, so currently we have like what has been done by MITRE and attack as a framework. We are taking these tools and techniques and trying to create like categories similar to the cyber kill machine, which I explained at the first stage. at that it was maybe 7 steps. Here they divided into 12 categories, starting from, as Akram just mentioned, from the initial access to persistence, to the defense evasion, and so on. And they are trying to put the communities as companies. As example, if Microsoft detects something, they share it with this framework, and they share all what happened on the attack, what are the groups which are suspecting that using this kind of techniques, and so on. And so that will lead us to this navigator, which will also spend some time at the end to go through it. But here you'll find each different categories and the techniques and tools for each category. I believe now they are 300 plus, and the number is growing. And this is something good to share this with the community. So if I'm a vendor or an enterprise, to be a good citizen, if I face something and I share it with the rest of the world, I believe this actually will add to the awareness, and everybody will start being ready and defending against these tools and techniques. So here, Akram, if you can also shed more light about how this attack is laid out, like give us more details about like how it's happening, how it's controlled, how we can benefit from it as an enterprise, not a vendor, not as a vendor.
Yeah, exactly. So it goes as tactics, starting by the initial access up to the impact. Those are the big tactics. Like tactic is something strategic, and it's divided into techniques. Like let's say the initial access has drive-by compromise to valid accounts use and so on. And each of these techniques has its own sub-techniques as well. And the whole idea is if you know that currently you're at the stage of defense evasion, and defense evasion means that someone is trying to bypass your defenses. So let's say you're at defense evasion and you've seen that maybe something like compiled HTML file. This is one of the techniques that has been triggered in your system. And also, historically, you've seen that at the persistent stage, you've seen maybe something like bits job technique has been triggered on your system. So one of the good things that MITRE would help you is basically it would tell you that those APT groups or this group of bad people usually uses these techniques. So and then it would give you the attack trajectory as well. So if you have been a victim for the persistent stage by bits job and then defense evasion by compiled HTML file, then this means that most likely you're under attack by maybe a group called Cozy Bear. And then you would know that Cozy Bear usually uses the command and control technique, which is data encoding, for example. So you try to be one step ahead of the attacker instead of being reactive. So you would go to the command and control tactic and then start to make sure that your defenses are well prepared for the group, which is Cozy Bear, having the intelligence that you know that they would start using data encoding once they reach this stage, which is a very good thing that MITRE can give you. Because if you have no visibility on what exactly APT group or maybe someone specific, then you would have to make sure check all the boxes, which would take lots and lots of effort. So this is a very good thing about MITRE. And then also, if you go to the next slide, Mohammed.
Yeah, before going there, like you mentioned that, Akram, but I just want to stress on it and highlight it again. As you can see here, like this color coding. So as Akram mentioned, so when you like one of the techniques in red, this means like all the items in red, this is for one group or multiple groups. So usually if they start with this technique, they will follow the rest. So this will actually shorten or maybe minimize the number of possibilities that you need to search for. So instead of like having like, having exponentially and getting dragged to a rabbit hole without actually need, this will be like a guideline. So if you are here, so this is maybe the next step, and they're using this tool for persistence and so on. So this is something I just want to stress on it. It's so you understand why this color coding. And when we have a slide, as I mentioned, about navigator, we will go there and show it to you live. Before going, I believe we have a question, Akram. So from Ali.
Yeah. So you can, so basically all of the tools currently, or most of the tools currently, they take very good pride in saying that they map to MITRE attack framework automatically, in a way that let's say you have a SIM or an EDR or an NDR or even next-gen firewall. Detection can be done based on TTPs or tactics, techniques, and procedures mapped to MITRE. But still, there is room for you to go and tune these out-of-the-box use cases provided by the vendors. And MITRE actually gives you this possibility. So in this slide, it's showing a technique, a specific technique. For example, there's a technique called new service. This is a known technique. And it will give you a description about this technique. What exactly is the new service technique, which is basically the operating system tries to create a new service, basically, where adversaries install this new service in order to execute something during the boot or the startup. It would give you what platforms where this new service technique might be running on, what permissions required to execute this technique, what are the detection mechanisms. So it will tell you that you need to monitor service creation through changes in the registry and common utilities using command line invocation, in a way that if you have a SIM tool or if you have an EDR tool, then you need to make sure that you collect those logs as well. It would give you the mitigation. What should you do against something like new service technique? What are the data sources that you should be collecting from in order to have visibility on this kind of technique? And then it would give you some examples to attacks or groups. So Lazarus group, for example, these are a very well-known group for ransomware. And they're very connected to another group called Lepsus and another group called Black Cat. So this Lazarus group is a very known, well-known group for ransomware attacks. And now you know that they use this new service technique. And I'll show you maybe by the end of this session, when we go to the demo part, I'll show you write-ups for ransomwares or maybe any kind of attacks from Cisco, either Talos or any other intelligence service. They will tell you that this kind of attack usually uses these kinds of tactics and techniques. And then you would go to MITRE, see exactly how to detect against those techniques, just like this one, and then go to your security stack and make sure that all the processes are there and the use cases are tuned against those kinds of attacks.
Okay.
So if we go to the next slide.
So this is like these are the groups. So this is one interesting, like and here we are giving an example of one of that group. It's actually a well-funded group, APT, like
so MITRE also gives you example information about tactics, techniques. It also gives you information about softwares. So what kind of softwares are used, like Mimikatz or any of the bad malicious softwares, and also the groups or the adversary groups. So adversary groups are people who are very well funded and usually state sponsored. The aim is not usually about maybe money or just the normal sabotage or damage, but it's more about something political maybe or something specific. So they're not just the script kiddies just for the sake of normal damage. So in this case, APT 28 or Advanced Persistent Threat 28 is a known group. And usually threat intel people know that These are related to the Russian government, so it's part of their cyber army, and they usually target NATO countries specifically. And we know that these are the techniques they use. So it will tell you that it uses input capture for key logging. It would use command line interface for remote code execution. Fallback channels, it would use connection proxies. And then this group specifically, usually it uses those softwares. So it would use something like external Mimikatz, Core Shell, and so on, or Certutle, which is, by the way, some of those tools are actually native Windows tools, which is another technique which is called living off the land. And living off the land basically means that using whatever provided by the host, which in this case is the operating system, to do the attack. And then again, references exactly who first knew about APT 28. In this case, it was FireEye, and so on. And remember, MITRE attack, it's again, it's like Wikipedia in the sense of anyone can basically submit a new technique, or maybe a new software being used in this new technique, and so on. And again, it's like peer review. So much like in Wikipedia, if you go and put bad information, people would downvote, and then it would be discarded. But if everyone is agreeing and you have citation that this has really happened, then it would be committed. So it's a live chart. It's not something static. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have any questions up to this point.
So I have a question, Akram. So how like an example, if there's an attack before that, like here the aliases, like these are some of the name which is this group are known of. So like the APT, this is the name of the MITRE, but maybe they also you'll find them known as Fancy Bear or Pawn Store or whatever. But my question is like how to link, as example, an attack to this group? How people will get to know that actually APT 28 are the one who behind this attack to the NATO or behind this DDoS or 0 day. So is there like a signature? Is there something? Are they proud of that? So they claim it? Can you also?
Yeah, so it depends. So some of them are very proud of launching the attacks. So they will take responsibility of doing the attacks, and to the point that they would brag about it and say that they have successfully completed attacks on so and so. To the point also that some interviews might happen with some threat intel companies. Like you would see something like Recorded Future as a tip company conducting interviews with APT groups, for sure through secure channel and anonymously. But this is one way of doing them. And the other way is maybe if it's something related to a government. So the government wouldn't be saying that they're launching an attack on another government, but then this information might be spread on the dark web. But also make it known that all of those techniques and tools, software specifically, which are being used, they're being replicated. So if I know that, let's say, Lapsus group, which is one group doing ransomware, and then I see another group called Black Cat or AlpV or whatever, and they're using the same tools which are used by Lapsus, then usually this means that there is ties between them. So it's the same guys maybe working or have created a new group maybe or whatever, leveraging the same tools. So yeah, this is the whole idea.
Good. Thank you, Akram. So let's go for the use case which we prepared. And Akram said like we'll talk about like this David Bianco pyramids of pain. Pain, like how easy it is to detect and understand like the security, starting from the trivial to the tough one. And here at Attack, actually, we are focusing on ATP, as Akram mentioned many times, tactic techniques and procedures. So tell us, Akram, like what this pyramids represent, and how like is this is by doing this, are we completely secure? What is behind? What is underneath this pyramid? What is above this pyramid, which is not covered? This is something will be interesting for all of us to discuss.
Yeah. So usually detection. To talk more broadly on this, so usually detection starts with first the signature-based detection, which is the easiest. This is like the comfort zone of detection, right? So you know that something bad, you know the signature of something bad, and then basically you try to scan the system to know if there is a match or not. So something like a hash value or a specific IP address or domain that you know something bad usually happens from those IP addresses or domains. This is the easiest way. And then after that, you go to the non-signature based detection, which starts with TTPs. And TTPs in their sense are maybe more tough than usually finding a known signature based detection because they rely on correlation. Time is also a factor in those TTPs. You have to have some sort of intelligence or a database of TTPs and then do correlations and so on. And this is where MITRE attack is very helpful in the sense of you don't have to do this in an ad hoc way. You have something that can be applied as a methodology. It can be applied as a process in order to detect. But then it goes even far beyond attack and TTPs because after the signature-based, after the TTPs, there is the anomaly detection, which is basically, it's not here in this pyramid, unfortunately, but anomaly detection means that this is something which is unusual to a specific environment. So let's say a specific user usually does some kind of activities and then we'll create a baseline, and then any deviation from this baseline means that something fishy is happening. And then even some detection might go even beyond anomaly detection, like what we call behavior analytics and machine learning. And then finally, you have what we call the threat hunting, which is basically you have checked all the boxes for the rest of the techniques, but still you're doing active threat hunting. But attack is very, very good in regards to TTPs. It's the map of what kind of tactics and techniques that you have to check and make sure that your systems are compliant with, and it's good, very good in this sense.
Yeah, I would just like some example came to my mind now, like from my experience as a network. Most of my time I work as network transport, and even like securing service provider, securing the perimeter. As you mentioned, usually this thing was simple, like for IP address domain, we have this one whitelisting, blacklisting, and we're keeping track of this. Like you have something called it manners, which is for service provider to be a good citizen, and you should apply this manner and keep this. It was very simple, like, you know, like a couple of access lists blocking some IPs and so on. Up to another example came to my mind, like about anomaly detection. Like some of the tools, as example, we can put it in the network, even detecting the end user behavior. So I remember even from quality of service perspective, some of the guys here, you know, how to use quality of service as a security tool. So if we know, like most of these kinds of users usually send traffic, as example, 1 megabit per second upload and something like maybe 10 downloads. So if you see one user trying to upload 1 terabit of data, so this means something malicious, because this guy maybe trying to share it with a command and control. So I mean, these ways, like even as somebody working a lot in network and the transport layer, you can detect this anomaly. You can put even some mitigation tool using the standard ways. I remember like when I thought reading about security 10 years back, there was one of the quotes, everything is a weapon, everything is a tool. So and everything the user can use it, the attacker can use it against you, even your own PC, but also you have a lot of tools you can use for security. This also, all of this adds to what we call it defense in depth and building a very solid security measures.
Yes, 100%, Mohammed.
Yeah. Let's move to, I believe the next slide, they are giving more one of the example about this detection and analytics. So over to you again, Akram.
So this is maybe a very simple way of employing attack framework to build a use case. The first is let's say you want to build a use case to defend against a specific technique, which let's say might be lateral movement, maybe. So first you need to understand exactly how this lateral movement technique is done by going through the attack page for it and understanding the technique, how exactly it works. And then the second thing is write or try this technique using some pre-written scripts, or as I mentioned, purple teaming tools. And purple teaming tools is very good way to test your systems by basically doing attack simulations. So instead of writing the detection correlation or use case and then hoping for the best, then if something bad happens, then you would be A-okay. You can actually simulate this by having maybe some sort of an agent on a specific virtual machine, and then you would tell the agent to simulate as if lateral movement is coming out of this machine. And then you would test your systems whether detection or alarms have been triggered for this machine or not. And then if something is not working as you would expect, you would go to step 3, which is basically iterating and keeping testing. So you would go and tune the use case and so on. And in most cases, those purple teaming tools actually they do integrate with your security stack in a way that they would tell you that you have tried to run this technique and your SIM has detected it. And then you would be satisfied with this result. Or on the other side, it might tell you that it tried to run this technique and there was no detection from your security tools. So it's very nice, those purple teaming tools. They're becoming more and more famous currently. Not sure if I can give some examples on vendors, but something like Attack IQ or Picus Security, those are the types of companies that provide these tools in a way that you would basically select the whole, let's say, attack framework, if you will, and then install a specific agent on a virtual machine, and then ask the agent to try each and every technique one by one, and then integrate it with your SIM, NDR, and EDR to see if detection has happened or not. And then it would present you with a report saying that you have failed those techniques and you have succeeded in detecting those techniques, which is a very smart way. And even Kali, the famous OS, so they have their own offensive one, which is the red teaming tool. And also they released very recently Purple Kali, which is used for the same for the same purpose, which is basically purple teaming, understanding whether your security detection is working or not, relying again on the MITRE attack framework.
Good. I have 2 points to add here, and maybe to take it further, the discussion. Like when you do the try it, do you recommend, I believe it's better to have it in a containment way, like in a quarantine version, something like sandboxing, not in the real production network? My first question. Second point, like I'm aware about, I was really aware about the red and blue teaming, which is one team work like an attacker, blue team work like a defender and work together. So is the purple teaming like a concept combining this red and blue become purple or something different?
So let's start by the second question. So usually red teaming, they're the good guys, but they want to make sure that there is no vulnerabilities in your environment that some other bad guy might use. And those have their own tools also, by the way. So they use some tools like Cobalt, Strike, and some other open source tools. And blue teams are basically the ones which are defending against those. Usually something like the SOC was all the capabilities like NDR, EDR, SIM, SOAR, XDR, you name it. But then the purple teaming means that you want to launch an attack and then see if it has been detected or not. So it's part of the blue and the red at once. Some people call it attack simulations. And then referring to the first question, yes, most of those tools that rely on open source Python scripts. So they would show you exactly what kind of script would be run to simulate or mimic the attack or the technique in a way that you would feel safe to say that if I have an agent installed and I would launch the let's say keylogger technique or whatever, you know that it's not a real keylogger, it's just simulating or mimicking the keylogger. So they would show you the source code of the Python script which would be done. But then usually the way it's done is on a separate virtual machine so that it's a controlled test in a way that you know that the only factor which is changing is the behavior of the agent based on your changes. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Akram. Let's go to the last slide here in our session today, which is the MITRE Navigator demo. If I may ask you, Akram, to share your screen and take us through this navigator. This is like, to answer you, Ali, the manual way to do this while Akram is sharing, to do this MITRE checks. But I believe now, like in many RFPs, as an entity, even for you, if you go to have an entity or something, you can ask the vendor, put it in the requirement to support MITRE attack framework, something like that. So this will make sure that even if you are purchasing a tool or purchasing a new technique or consultancy services, these guys will be aligned with MITRE attack framework and will get the best of it without doing it manually. Akram, are you ready to share?
Yeah, you can just make me a presenter or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So this is basically the MITRE website, which is attack.mitre.org. And once you go there, you would see all the matrix. So it's going from the reconnaissance phase up to, let me minimize this, to the impact phase. And those are the tactics. And then it would show you what kind of techniques under those tactics. So let's say, let's say something like lateral movement by remote service hijacking. So this is a technique to do lateral movement based on MITRE, on what MITRE is saying. And then when you go to this technique, it will tell you that there's two sub-techniques for remote service session hijacking. One of them is SSH hijacking, and this is the ID for the technique. And another one is called RDP hijacking. And then it will tell you this is the ID, what those are the sub-techniques, the tactic, the platforms it's running on, what permissions are required, when was it created, and so on. It would explain a little bit about this technique. It would show you the mitigations that you should do in order to protect yourself against those techniques. And it will tell you also what kind of detection that can be put into place in order to detect those techniques. And in some cases, it would also show you what kind of groups that usually rely on this techniques or sub-techniques. And at the end, it would tell you what are the references where, or maybe those are the papers or whatever that show that some of those techniques are happening. It can also show you the same, but not for enterprise, maybe for mobile as well. So there is some tactics and techniques for mobile attacks. And finally, which is equally important, the ICS, or the industrial control system. So again, for the industrial control systems, there is tactics and techniques starting from initial access to impact. And each and every one of those has its own techniques as well. But this is, we're talking about OT environments. This is one way of looking into MITRE, but then others is basically what I'm showing you. I will show you right now, which is what we call the MITRE Attack Navigator. So instead of going into navigation like this, I'll show you a very nice tool to map it. But before we do that, if you go here to groups as well, so groups, it will show you those are the advanced persistent threat groups. So it will tell you what's the name and if there is any association with other people. So it will tell you APT 28, also known as these names, and more info about them. Another one is, let's say, Shell Crew or Deep Panda. And if you click on Deep Panda, for example, it will tell you that Deep Panda is known to be associated with these other groups. And it will tell you that usually these guys use these techniques. And usually these guys use these softwares. But again, this MITRE website, we're basically navigating by clicking through. Another tool that you can leverage is what we call the MITRE Navigator. And Navigator is basically a simplified way of doing this. So if you do create a new layer, let's do it as enterprise in this case. So once you go there, it will show you the whole tactics techniques, but then you have your own options to choose and play with those. So basically you have a search bar on the left-hand side here. And let's say a specific software, like if we search here, Mimikatz, for example, as a specific software, which I told you can be used for stealing passwords. So if you do select Mimikatz, it would show you here that this one is highlighted, this one is highlighted, this one is highlighted as well. And it will tell you that this software is being used or leveraged in those techniques. Or maybe the other way. So let's do APT 28 as a threat group. Or for example, let's do APT 39. So it would tell you that APT 39 usually uses those techniques, and then you can select those techniques. And then from those selections, you can basically export this as an Excel file in a way that you know that these are the tactics and techniques. You can even from here right click and pin this selected, deselected, view the whole technique, and then it would open the MITRE page for you. You can do queries here by all sorts of things in a way that it's you can do like APT 28 and the tool Mimikatz, and it would tell you that it's under this specific technique. And then you export this basically and give it to maybe your SOC team and tell them to tune the defenses for this known or for this specific attack, because now you know that you're under this. Or in another way, if you search for a specific vulnerability that you have, or maybe you have seen someone using Mimikatz for password dump or something, then you would search for it and another technique and another technique, and then it would highlight for you that this is part of only maybe 2 threat groups showing in the filter. Then you know that you're under attack by either one of them. So this is a very nice tool of leveraging MITRE instead of just clicking through or navigating. Another good example, if I show you, so if we go here for, so if you search here for Black Cat on Talos, yeah, so Black Cat is one ransomware group which is also very well known. It will tell you here that they used to be called Black Matter, and now they're being called Black Cat. They're responsible for the attack on the colonial pipelines last year. Actually, you've seen this group now in Egypt recently working, attacking some oil and gas companies with ransomware. But the idea of any blog post or write-up about any attack, either from Cisco Talos or from any other threat intel group, is it would show you this attack happening again in the same stages. So it would tell you the initial access and so on, and it will give you that this group in the initial access, they use the Microsoft Exchange vulnerability. In the persistence, they use reverse SSH tunnel and so on. In defense evasion, and it would explain how this works. And at the end, maybe it would tell you in details how they do lateral movement, and maybe how to some IOCs, like some signature-based detection, which might help, specific hashes, specific IP addresses, and then coverage, how to secure yourself against them using your tools. So it's again any, and this is not only Talos. If you search any known APT group or attack on any blog, they will tell you exactly how those attack groups work based on tactics and techniques from MITRE. Not sure if you have any questions up till now.
Thank you, Akram. Very informative. Yeah, and thank you all. I believe the session went very smooth. Like we didn't feel the time. It was very interesting. Just as a takeaway, remember today is the first session of the security series. We start by identifying why the cyber attack getting smarter, why the attack surface growing exponentially, how to secure ourselves, understanding this cyber chain, and even if the attacker started step 1 and 2, we are still can catch up and detect him at step 3 and be proactive. And we show you that some of the MITRE as non-for-profit organization and some of the frameworks which we talk about today, attack. In the upcoming session, we'll talk about another framework from MITRE, which is defend. But first, we understand the attack surface. Then in the next steps, we will talk about like how to identify the gaps, how to put the architecture, and finally, how to defend. Let me give you like 5 minutes if you have any further questions. Again, you can unmute yourself and speak the question or put it on the chat. If no further question, I will thank you again. Thank you, Akram, for sharing this very useful knowledge. And Looking forward to see all of you in the upcoming session. I will post the video on LinkedIn and it will be on my YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with your network to spread the knowledge, and have a great day, and see you on the next session.